What happens when the world gets turned on its head? We're forced to look inward, perhaps become fearful, sometimes lash out at others. While there are others in the world who don't give up hope because they believe in people. Join me, Kevin Tibbles, and Amy Goldberg for our new podcast, Believe in People, where we meet those who don't give up hope. Today, we're going to take you on a musical journey around the world, a child's journey, a journey for change.
Our guest is Jake Groshong with the Playing for Change Foundation, which helps children come together and grow through music.
Jake, welcome to Believe in People. The easiest question to ask you is, why does music make a difference?
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. And, music makes a difference because it's our only universal language. It's the only thing that everyone in the whole world can speak and communicate with together. And it's also something that helps us identify with who we are in a way that nothing else can. It's why we use music as the key to help kids rise up through their own culture, because when you're able to identify with who you are in that way through art and dance and the sounds of where you come from, it creates a different level of understanding of who you are, why you are, and what's possible for you. Your self-esteem rises, your abilities rise. And it's not that music is some magical cure, but it is a gateway to allow us to expand in every part of our lives. And we see it time and time again in every one of our programs around the world.
And Jake, music obviously influenced your life. I mean, you ran a theater company for 8 years. How did you segue into not-for-profit?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I did. I came from the theater world, but I actually grew up with my parents met at the Eastman School of Music, and my mom and dad are oboe and flute players. And I grew up going to classical music concerts, and I was an oboe player myself and actually went to school on an oboe scholarship originally. So I had quite a background in music, and was also a music major in college where I learned a whole bunch of different instruments, and it really was a centerpiece in my life. Now, I discovered musical theater at the same time, and that took over my life for many, many years. But it's always been something that's really vital to what I do and has really informed every part of my life since I was very young.
Tell us a little bit about your organization, what it's called, and how many countries can you find it in now?
Yeah, absolutely. It's called the Playing for Change Foundation, and we're currently in 16 countries. We have over 50 locations in those 16 countries. And that's throughout South America, North America, Africa, and Asia right now. And we're at this rate adding 2 to 3 programs a year. We've been around for about 20 years, but we're in a real growth period right now. The need and the excitement for our work has really hit a tipping point, and it's been an incredible last few years. And just this last year, we opened in Costa Rica, Panama, and Uganda. So and those are all just absolutely spectacular locations.
And why do you think that growth spurt happened? Did anything have to do with the pandemic, or what do you think?
Well, part of it is I was hired to head the organization about 3.5 years ago, and have been really fortunate to help turn it into something that is not only sustainable, but has developed some incredible partners from, the United Nations. We do a lot of work with the United Nations, a lot of work with the Gates Foundation. We've really just grown to a point where we have major partners around the world that are seeing the value in it and supporting us in significant ways.
And you have also worked with a number of artists. Can you just share those with us with regards to the group?
Yeah, there's actually hundreds of artists that we work, hundreds of major artists that we work with. I'm very fortunate. And there's another side of our organization that creates these viral videos in which we have major artists appearing alongside street musicians around the world. And those have about 2 billion views at this point. And that's really where our organization started from. But we've partnered with artists from Bono and Pharrell and Peter Gabriel and Annie Lennox and Ringo Starr, down to street musicians you've never heard of in countries that you've never been to. And we put them together on songs or on projects, and it's incredible how much everyone just wants to be seen as a musician. No matter how famous they are, what really matters is being able to play and be seen for their art.
Wow. And Jake, wow, that's impressive. And how does that work? So do you physically build and go in and help to build a facility so it's and then it's self-sufficient? And how does that roll out?
So each program we have is built from the ground up. Each one is completely individual and designed for the community that it's in. So, for example, we just built a new program in Uganda. It's in the Bidi Bidi refugee camp, and it's for South Sudanese refugees in northern Uganda. And there's about 300,000 refugees there, and 80% of the camp is under 18. So it's an extremely young population. And what we do is, in that case, we find a local nonprofit who's operating and doing some programs on the ground. And we worked with them to develop a program, identify a location for the program, and then eventually help create a massive facility there that starts construction this month. And that's going to serve, hundreds and eventually thousands and thousands of South Sudanese refugees. And we've already seen the input of that program. I was actually just there a couple of weeks ago, and the talent level and the commitment of those kids, you've seen them go from being quite lethargic and having nothing to do to being incredibly committed to music as their future, as the gateway to their education, to what they want to be as they grow up. They wrote us songs while we were there about that, some of them want to be doctors, some of them want to be teachers, whatever they are, but that they're using music as the pathway to get there. Another example is in Mali, where we've been for 15 years now or so. That's one of our first programs. And when we started there, the community, when you turn 15 in Mali, you have to take a test, right? And it tells you if you can actually go on to the next level of education. And where we are in outside of Bamako, we have a school that community was passing that test about 6% when we started. And they took the test last year, and over 95% of the community passed the test.
Wow.
And was able to continue on with their education. So that the only difference between that time period is that our school came in and started working with the kids. Another great example, I was just in Nepal a few months ago, and there we had we opened a program in a village where girls weren't allowed to go to school if they were on their period. Women were barely outside of their home. They were pretty shut in. It's a very male-driven society. And since the 10 years since we opened that program, we now have a community where women are equal in leadership. They're not only on the town council, they're now touring around the entire region, teaching other villages that women have power. And they're using theater and music and dance to communicate those messages. And we have this group called the Mother Society, and they're affecting thousands. What they're doing is educating against sex trafficking, because that's the biggest issue they face. And we always focus on how to use our education and music to fix the major social issues that any community is facing. There, it's sex trafficking. Our program in Brazil, it's the gang violence. In Mexico, it's the drug trade. Whatever it is, wherever we are, we're helping to solve the issues for these kids so they can continue on and have a really successful life. But one of the things when I was in Nepal that was most exciting was I got to participate in a menstruation workshop for the girls there, who got to learn how to use a reusable pad and how to continue on with their life and not have to be shut in their home when they're on their period. But the cool thing there is that half the class that was learning about this was boys. And that's not something you'd even see in the United States. So you had this village that went from a place where they couldn't even have girls outside of the home to where now boys are learning about, what a period is, and that it's an acceptable thing, and that girls are allowed to be participating in regular society. And those are the kind of changes we see on a regular basis, where all we did was insert this program. And we hire everyone locally, and we have every administrator and teacher and students come from the local community. And they grow into these places that are really educational utopias where this is an example of what can happen when we actually invest in culture. And I think that's what makes us quite unique in our work.
So it's not just about music per se, but what you're saying to us is that the music allows you to grow culturally, which I'm assuming allows you to grow in terms of your own self-confidence and your own stature. But then you're also suggesting that the music provides some form of empowerment to the people there. And is that related to the culture, that all of a sudden your culture in your small part of the world is something that you can now look towards as something to be proud of?
It's exactly right. It's exactly right. I think one of the issues that communities outside of, what we consider first world countries face is this feeling of being lesser than. And by finding pride in who you are and your own culture, by being empowered with the beauty of it and the intelligence of it, and understanding that you have a future as bright as anyone else in the world, there's nothing else like it to level the educational playing field that we have around the world.
And I can imagine, Jake, that there's quite a bit of red tape when you go to various countries. How do you navigate that whole world? I mean, does it take years to build something, or is it baby steps? What happens there?
It really depends on the program. I try never to open a program that doesn't have multiple local partners involved, because they help us to navigate those in each country. But I've opened some programs within, 2 to 3 months, and some within 4 to 5 years. It really just depends on how difficult those roadblocks are. Is there a facility in place? Have we identified who the administrators and teachers of the program will be? Is the student population identified and ready to get to work? I think that, our focus is really on, we don't have a cookie cutter way of doing this, that we have to build each one from the ground up, from the very beginning, because otherwise we start to cut corners and we don't identify that we're doing this within the individual culture and in their way of doing things and not ours. And that's always our focus. We're never trying to institute an American ideology on any of these places. It's that we're using their ideology to define their program and how it's going to work.
I was just going to ask whether or not you ran across any suspicion within local communities and governments as a result of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, constantly, actually, especially when we get started. And that's where having the local people and partners identified are invaluable, because there's no way we could come into these places and try to open a school without having the trust of local leaders and communities. So we have certainly run into some situations that are extremely difficult around, governments and militias and different individuals trying to sabotage our work. And, there's issues around security and all the issues that the communities are facing that we have to deal with as well. But the reality is, when you have people within the community helping you problem solve them and you trust those people, you can overcome any hurdle.
And Jake,
they trust you?
Well, I think that trust takes time to build, but fortunately we have a track record now of success that allows us to come in and at least say, look, we've done this before. Here's the proof of it. Here's a dozen videos showing you our work. Here's, other administrators in other countries that you can talk to about the success we've had together. And then over time, we build that trust to where we're not concerned about them operating correctly. We just want to support them in their work.
Right, actually. So I was going to ask you, from a sustainability standpoint, like, how does the funding model work? So Jake, you receive X number of dollars from donations, probably private donations. And how does that look? Then where does the funds, where do they go?
So each program has a different, cost model behind it, because different countries and in some places we have, free facilities we can use. In others, we've had to build facilities. So it really varies, but generally we develop our annual budget each year for each program individually. We work with them to identify the needs and the expansion that they're going to have within the year. And then we throw as many fundraisers as we can. We do as many appeals as we can, work with major artists. We have a shirt coming out next month that Shepard Fairey designed in his Obey line that's benefiting us. We try to find really creative ways to raise funds and not necessarily operate like any nonprofit, but to find our own way of doing things that fit within our model of using music as the key to every part of what we do.
I am noticing that there is at least in the shot that I can see, there's a guitar right next to you on the table. You've already told us that you're a bit of a musician when it comes to the oboe, and that you grew up with music.
Yeah.
I'd be interested in knowing, what do you get from music? What do you get out of it? How does it make you feel?
I would say that when I'm having a tough day, which, in this work can happen quite regularly, there's a lot of frustrations and roadblocks you run into. Music is the thing that centers me the most. It's the thing that allows me to understand that, and part of it is sort of looking at from a grand scale, which I like to do, is that, we're this floating rock among trillions of stars, and like, let's get some context perspective here. We have a chance to actually help people. And when I get to listen to music and play music, it helps me to relate back to that all of the issues that I'm facing are solvable. And I think that's what we try to instill in our program, is that, if you start to use music as the key, all the issues we're facing, we can find solutions to. We can find a future.
And Jake, how do you get your instruments? Like, what is it? Are they donated? What do you find people tend to play more of or not? I mean, how do you sort of start the musical journey piece of it?
Yeah, so we let the program guide us in terms of what they want instrument wise, what they want to teach. We always start with local instruments. So in Nepal, we teach the harmonium. In Brazil, we're teaching traditional drums. In Ghana, we teach the talking drum. That's where we start, is with the traditional instruments and what they learn. But they always generally ask for two things, which is they want to learn piano and they want to learn guitar. We do have partnerships with certain brand makers that give us those. We partner with Gibson, we partner with Roland, Behringer, Audio Technica. We do get a lot of equipment, but we have to purchase about half of it overall each year, which we obviously do through donations. But it does vary per program. We don't have a set instrument that we give them. The one thing we do for every program is provide them with a recording studio. And that's really important. We make sure every studio has proper recording equipment, and they have proper video equipment as well, so they can film and create videos out of their songs. But we also then connect all of our programs to each other around the world, so kids can write songs together. You might start, a drum track in Rwanda, and then you'll add vocals in Thailand, and then Bangladesh will pick up a bass line. And we're actually creating songs all around the world where these kids can understand that while they may have never left their 5-block radius of their community, there's a huge world out there that they're a part of.
So it is kind of like We Are the World, except it really is We Are the World.
Exactly. It is. Yeah, that's a great inspiration.
If you are a person living in poverty where you may have a difficult time, either your mother and father may not be working, you may not have access to education, how can we you up?
So I think that's where we get the most inspiration, right? Where, and when we visit these communities, we see a lot, like, we have so much more to learn from these areas of the world than they could ever learn from us. We're just giving them resources. The only thing that changes is that we're giving them the technology or tools that they're lacking, right? But there's no reason that these kids shouldn't have the same access to everything that we have. The way that music lifts them up is they speak the same language. There's no difference between us when it comes to those sorts of things. We all understand what music is. We can hear a song that we don't know or we do know. It doesn't matter, but we can listen to that song and understand it, and understand what it's saying, even if we don't know the language. I mean, that's what's so incredible about music, is we all speak this, and it's the thing that connects everyone. And there's no community we go into where we say we want to help people write through music where they have questions, because in the areas of the world that we work in, music is a part of life. It's a part of their heritage. They earned that. And we just help make sure the next generation has the tools to continue on those traditions.
And I guess too, Jake, from that next generation standpoint, do you find people contributing back? So they take the programs, and I imagine, the length of time they take, it could be anywhere from a year or more. You'll share that with us. But yeah, what does that look like?
So the kids who participate, the success rate they have in school and going on to careers is about 3 times as high as those who don't participate generally in their communities. So you're seeing a massive increase in success just by engaging in their cultural heritage. And I think we've seen what happens with every single program is the entire community starts to own it and take it as theirs. And that also brings with it increased local government funding, national government funding for each of these programs, to where over time, we're obviously involved in them forever. We make sure they have everything they need. We help them, and guide them at where we can. But the reality is these become owned by the community. And the more that we can step away from them, the more that they start to be funded and supported by others. That's our success, right? We would love to be able to just hand these off and say, the community owns this now. The kids are in a place where they get to advance for the rest of their lives because they're able to identify with who they are and learn through who they are.
Isn't it funny how, here I am talking to you about this program, and yet what we're talking about really are communities that have communicated with one another, either vocally or through music. And it is kind of conceited in a way for someone like myself to think, oh, well, we're going to go and show them how to communicate through music, when the bottom line here is that they've probably got a heck of a lot more to teach us than we can teach them about this sort of tradition. I mean, where do you think we got?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And I wish more people understood that we have so much to like. And when you listen to the musical traditions of these places, like, I can't tell you how brilliant the music is that comes out of these areas of the world that we just never get to hear. And it is absolutely conceded to us. And I'm certainly guilty of that before I started working here, that they have this thousands and thousands of year old traditions in these areas of the world that are extraordinary. And they have their own way of communicating and own languages and own musical languages that we can begin to understand. And the more that we can sit back and support them in rising up through those, the better off we all are, because then we also get to participate and learn from them. And it's an incredible thing where you can start to, you love who you are and where you come from, but then you start appreciating all the other cultures of the world and learning from them, and it helps shape you again to who you are and where you want to go. And it's something that I certainly get to reap the rewards of on a regular basis, because I'm very lucky to be able to work in the position that I do.
And then when you think, Jake, you're sharing your story, how do you share that story to funders so that they understand that you're providing access to already talented and enriched people that have this skill?
So the thing is, the problem that's happened in each of the communities we work in is that these skills are starting to get lost. And part of that's just, most of it is because of poverty, right? Because of the lack of tools and resources, where they need to focus on, food and water and survival a lot more than they do on, the next drum they're going to have. And unfortunately, they're correlated, right? Where actually having that drum leads to everything else as well. But if you're so focused on, just trying to have clothing on your back, it's a lot harder to focus on your future long term. So what we look at is, okay, we as this group here have the ability to provide them with tools that will lead them to help start focusing on their long-term futures rather than today. And obviously we have to deal with all of the issues that come with that, from teen pregnancy to child labor to whatever it might be. We're constantly facing those issues and figuring out solutions to them, but we're working with the community to solve those solutions. And I think, the real lesson for me is we should never assume that we have the answer for anyone. And I never go to anyone and say, here's how we're going to do it. all I do is ask them, what do you need to thrive? What's missing? How do we get you to a sustainable way where you're leading this, where we're not supporting you forever, where you know that over time, this is something that is going to lead to futures where everyone is supporting themselves. How do we get to that point? And we work backwards and figure it out.
And it sounds like we all benefit as a result of that. You know, Jake, every week we ask this question to the person who has come on to share their stories with us, and that is that you have been to many places in the world. You have probably seen incredible positivity, but you have also seen probably a lot of the nasty things that take place in our world. And our question to you is, after all of that, why do you still believe in people?
You know, the reason I believe in people is, that's a very easy answer for me, because of the work I do. I get to see that we are all basically good. You know, we're born good. No one is born evil. And I see that because every one of the kids that we get to work with around the world, thousands and thousands of kids, when they get an instrument in their hands and they start playing, there's a level of joy there, a level of positivity that, you know, even in America, I don't think we ever really get to see. There's a pureness in that understanding that you have power as a person, that you can create something good for the world, that you are not alone, that you come from something and somewhere that matters. If we were able to give that experience to every kid as they're growing up, all of the terrible things I've seen, I think the vast majority of those go away. And that all the terrible things come from a place where they weren't given opportunity, where they weren't allowed to have the education they deserve. They weren't allowed to know who they are in the right way. And it's our job to ensure that moving forward, this next generation does.
Wow. Thanks, Jake. Thank you so much for your time. And playingforchange.org is a website that everyone should be going to and checking out. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, that was one of the most inspiring conversations that I've had in some time. And, you know, I'd be interested in knowing, Amy, whether or not putting an instrument in a young person's hand, and that someday they won't pick up a weapon like a gun in the future.
Wow, that's powerful, Kevin. And in fact, that's so true, because you're building someone's self-esteem and empowering them to see what's possible. And I think it does prevent people from wanting to do harm and then focus on the good aspects of life, you know, wherever they are. Well,
thanks for joining us, everybody.
Absolutely. That's playingforchange.org. And if you like this episode, please check us out on Believe in People, on our YouTube channel, and everywhere else. Thank you so much.